Today we are learning basketball with Meghan Hall, a WNBA Senior Reporter with at USA Today. Based in Atlanta, covering the dream up close. We see you at the press conference welcoming Angel Reese, which was super exciting to see in Atlanta. We'll get into all that in a minute, but how are you doing today, Meghan?
I am living the dream, as the kids say. Doing pretty fantastic, and yeah, pun fully intended, of course. But yeah, this is it's cool. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You do great work covering the WNBA and just the game and everything from the draft to the league to the teams, the roster building, the movement. So appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit of hoops here and teach me something about what went down this WNBA offseason because there was we were just talking before the pod. It feels like the NBA has some crazy transactions, but the WNBA just I don't know, they just like hit you with like nonstop. Like it just never ends, like you were saying.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's been a very busy off season for a number of reasons, but one being that I would say 80% of the league were free agents, so you had a lot of movement. This off season and people changing teams, re-signing with teams, those sorts of things. Obviously, we'll get into all of that, but yeah, that alone in itself told me like this is going to be a wild ride.
Right. I mean, there's just a ton of talent, and that's probably one reason expansion could be or is around the corner. It just feels like you constantly see first round pick talent just like barely make the rotation and have to like bounce around a few teams just to get an opportunity. We'll get into the draft a little bit, but I thought we could start with just your journey into getting where you are today, and any advice you might have to anyone trying to aspire to be in basketball sports media, covering any level of the game, or just any advice for someone pursuing a similar path.
Yeah. So a couple things. I would say first, I did not have the traditional journey to get here. I did not go to journalism school. I actually have a business background. I've got 2 degrees in marketing and just business management. I
Hey,
had a
same
12
same
year.
here. Not to cut you
Yeah.
off, but so far same here. We're right on
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, so I had a 12-year career in business and marketing and sales, and I did a little content creation before I got here. But really, what it was just me deciding, like, hey, where I wasn't fulfilled. My purpose wasn't being fulfilled either. And so it was a lot of deep work, a lot of like, what is next? Where am I going? And I honestly did not know the answer to that question, but shout out to one of the career coaches I had at the time, and she's really the one who like opened my eyes, who was like, hey, what are you doing that's keeping you happy if work is not keeping you happy? And at the time I was podcasting, I was writing, but I was doing all that like on the side outside of my full-time job. And she's like, yeah, tell me more about that. And that turned into a whole entire conversation of like, hey, we're going to go back to school, which if anybody has ever been back to school after the age of 30, oh my gosh, I don't know why I thought that was a great idea to try to balance school plus a whole entire family while working a job. It was a lot. It was a lot. But yeah, went back to school. And then I really just started doing intentional work to get into the space. And honestly, having that marketing career actually really helps me a lot. I'm a storyteller by nature. And so I was able to essentially kind of say like, hey, I maybe have not been writing about sports, but I know people and I know how to take complex things and make them really simple for people to understand. And so that is essentially what has informed my journalism career. So that honestly, to be quite honest with you, that whole transition probably took less than 9 months, that is not typical by any sort of standards. But it was through a lot of hard work. It was through a lot of intentional pouring into myself, it was through a lot of networking and just really deciding where I wanted to go and what sort of space I wanted to be in. And so I had people in my life, especially shout out to one of my really good friends, and someone who I consider a brother now, who was like, hey, you should try WNBA. They're in your they're in your backyard. They need more talented, people to write. They need stories, those sorts of things. And it was just that little suggestion that kind of set everything off. To be honest with you, I was an NFL girly before now. Like NFL was my wheelhouse. I grew up on football. And so I was like, my WNBA knowledge was like this big, like not very big at all. But it was just that little, hey, turn your head here, that really helped me out. And yeah, I just took off from there. So it turned into a whole entire career. And now it's a passion. It is for sure something that has changed my entire life. And I have zero regrets about it. And I plan to keep being around.
Hey, I mean that's an awesome story. Just following your passion and trying to find where your skills and passion align. And I mean you're putting in work, and it feels like sounds like you're on the path that you're looking for. And can definitely relate to some of what you said there for motivations. And it's nice when you have someone pointing the way or believing in you and showing you where maybe you can strike next. So that's a very cool story there. And on the I guess, how do you think someone else in the sports media world could not maybe follow the same path but learn from it?
Yeah. So, and I realized after I finished, I was like, dang, I did not answer the question about advice. So I will do that. I will do
I
that.
hit you with the double question, so we might as well, get back into it there.
No,
That's
you're all good. You're all good. Honestly, I think for me it was be intentional. And I say that a lot, but I mean like every single day, wake up and ask yourself, how am I helping myself get towards my goal? And I think a lot of times we say we have these goals and we want to get there, but what are we doing each day to get ourselves there? And that doesn't necessarily have to mean, hey, you have everything figured out, but it means what am I doing each day? Something small to pour back into myself and my dream. The second thing is making sure that you remain you at all times. A lot of times people get in this space and they say, oh, I can't do that because there's 50 other people that already do that in the space. Yeah, but they don't do it like you do. And so that's what I
mm,
really want to impress upon people is like nobody can do what you do except for you and in your way and in your flair. And so I really want to tell anyone like if you know that your jam is analytics and that is your thing, go for it, friend. Like, please, by all means, lean into it. If you know that, like, hey, I am absolutely into like the fashion and the culture around the space, lean into it because you need people who are passionate about what they do. So always stay true to you. And then the third thing is just once you find your lane, stick to it. We have enough people that are like jumping around and trying to do too many things at once. But once you feel like, hey, I've got my lane, stick to it because people will come find you. They will say, oh, you know what? I know that Meg does X, Y, and Z, and I like to follow her because she does X, Y, and Z, right? Like that's just kind of how it works, I think, in any space, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, whatever the space is, like people will come find you because they rock with you. And so I think that is just general advice, but I think it applies to anyone who might be in this sports space or even in the media space. Like those are just, again, they're very, very simple, but I think it gets lost in this industry when so many people see the highlight reels. They see the tips of the mountaintop. They don't see the entire body of work that went there to get to where that person is. And so a lot of that is rooted in you got to be you at all times. You got to maintain what you do well. And then of course, like lean into it. Do all the things that you know that you can do well because that will set you apart.
yeah, that's all great advice right there for sure. It's tough to find that niche, but if you do and you can tell that you're doing something a little differently than everyone else, then definitely totally agree with co-sign all of that. To follow, try to you know figure out where your strengths lie and with those interests and just kind of combine it. And that's similarly for me, that's what led me to covering the Magic and doing data analytics and doing this podcast and just the writing and all that stuff. So it can definitely relate to that path. And what is it that ultimately drew you to the WNBA on top of maybe the advice from a friend there,
Yeah.
and
So
it being
I
in your backyard, as you said?
I was about to say, so I love telling the story. So a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine was like, hey, yeah, you should try WNBA, see if they'll credential you for a game. And I'm like, okay, cool. So reached out to the dream and I'm like, hey, I have never covered WNBA, but I cover sports. I'm currently writing for Coltswire. At the time I was writing for Coltswire on the USA Today contract side. And I was like, here are some examples of my work. I know sports and I know people, but I would love to cover a game. Here's what I can do for you. Dream were like, cool. We appreciate it, right? So this was like 2023. So if you think about this timeline, it's important to the context of where I'm going. But this is in 2023. This is right before the boom of like the Caitlin Clark, the Angel Reese, sort of that draft class, and just the growth of the W, everything happening at the same time. So I get my first game, and it was actually a 30-point blowout loss to the New York Liberty, right? It was absolutely like, what is even happening in this game? But I remember like not thinking about necessarily the loss because yes, that was one thing. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, where have I been? why have I not been here sooner? These are super talented athletes. Like somebody needs to be writing about them. It probably should be me, and I need to be screaming from the mountaintops about it, right? And so I just was like beating myself up because I was like, girl, what have you been doing with your life? Like, why have you not been here sooner? And so I remember thinking from that moment, like not just telling the story about the loss, but like telling the story about what happened, telling the story about the athletes that were involved. It was talent like a Brianna Stewart. It was talent like a Sabrina Ionescu. It was, talent like a Ryan Howard. Like those are the things that I was like, oh my God, like somebody needs to be telling these stories more. So I just remember being hooked at that point. And yeah, I have not left. So I think I showed up in June of 23, and I'm now about to cover my 4th season of the W. I absolutely have not left. So I did. I covered every like home game from then. Rest of the season from then. And then when I arrived at USA Today full time in September of that same year, one of the first questions I asked was, what does your WNBA coverage look like? And they were like, yeah, we should probably be doing more of that, honestly. And if you want to do that, like by all means, go ahead. So yeah, I just started writing about the W. And at that point, I think we were into the playoffs and that sort of thing. But to that point, it took off really quickly. One, because I was intentional about it and I asked the question, but also the timing was really important because, again, it was right after the W had this really big season. You have the Aces, Liberty in the finals there, really, really great finals. And then it comes right into this college season where you have the big talent like a Caitlin Clark, like an Angel Reese, like a Cameron Brink, Rickea Jackson, all those people at the top of that draft class. And so from there, I got to cover college season because, at the time USA Today was like, hey, you want to write about college? And I'm like, y'all, my college knowledge is also like this big, but sure. And yeah, I just immersed myself in it, and same sort of feeling like, what have I been doing with my whole life? But I will say this, I think that sort of feeling that I had and that sort of thing that I got excited about was what I wrote about. And that is what really how I kind of established myself in that sort of space and in establishing or helping to establish USA Today as one of the go-to entities for WNBA coverage, because I was writing from the perspective of, a fan. I was writing from the perspective of somebody who doesn't know as much. And I was telling people, oh yeah, if you like this person, oh, there's like 6 other people who also do this and you need to be paying attention to them. Or like, oh, this team has been under the radar and here's why, like nobody's paying attention to them. Those are the things I was writing about because I was just really writing from the place of a new lens, a fresh lens. Oh my gosh, this is really exciting to me. Somebody else has to be screaming about this. And if they aren't, I'm going to make sure that they are. Yeah, it's just been one wild ride that and you can tell now I'm geeked about, talking about this stuff, but like, this is what I was feeling then. And I still feel it now. I still get like goosebumps talking about like the W and the college game as well. Cause I think both of them are intersected. They kind of, have that intersectionality there. So yeah, I think all in all, that is just where my passion started and it just continued to go.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, you love it. And right when you started doing it, and I can, definitely relate to a lot of those moments, covering the Magic and having the first couple games with like Jalen Suggs having a big moment and getting to tell the player's story from everything you've seen and from the beginning to end and kind of like tell it fully and realizing that there might be an opening for more voices covering this team or the league at large and whichever team or league that is and realizing like you're as good of a voice as any to cover these. And something I think I try to do too that you hit on at the end there is making sure to still like give the voice of the fan and as like an ambassador of the game without being too harsh on the movie critic side of things where everything has to be like, just 2 stars out of 5 because everything sucks. Like it doesn't have to be that way. Like it could just be everything's pretty good and sometimes there's great and, you can appreciate it in a different way. So, I definitely can appreciate covering teams the way like a fan would want to see their team covered more so than like a national perspective generalist is just kind of doom and gloom about everything and all the teams. And I think there's people gravitate towards that kind of coverage, so that's a great way to come at it. And we can all be fans of basketball and just come at it from that. Like it doesn't have to be like we're all stands of one player because we wrote well about them once and then we
Mm-hmm.
hate them because we, accurately kind of described what went wrong one time because things go wrong a lot in basketball. It's a game of runs, and generally something happened, but that's covering the game. But can definitely appreciate where you're coming from and that journey, and I think people can definitely learn to once you find your niche to really stick to that path. And with the dream in your backyard, I'm not sure when Renee Montgomery came in the picture with all that. When you were covering there, but she's always a fun voice covering basically everything in basketball. You can't really turn on the game and not see her in a pregame studio or calling a game. So she's a fun voice. I'm not sure, when if that crossed over with your timeline a little bit, but she's been there a few
Yeah.
years now.
Yep.
And obviously the big Angel Reese trade blockbuster deal. I think it was like day one of free agency, maybe as well. Like it kind of kicked off
Yeah.
everything and just kind of threw everything off for a day. We're like, all right, let's reset tomorrow. We got to let this cool down. But Angel Reese and a second round pick swap in 28 for 2 first round picks, which feels like nothing. Like I know very little about the value of everything on the W side, but like that just feels like absolutely nothing. Like for what I consider like one of the few franchise cornerstone type star talents, faces of the league, like what was the instant reaction to just Atlanta getting this deal and making this deal like happen, and everyone realizing like it wasn't just fake news, it wasn't a fake like tweet that somebody had made up, like they actually got Angel Reese for 2 first round picks to go with the rest of the team.
Yeah, so honestly, I think the trade is actually pretty notable considering that they didn't have to give up any other players in that trade. And I would say that free agency certainly helps that. But they did have a couple of players on the roster that, like, if Atlanta wanted to send someone over, they could have, right? But the fact that it was just for a couple of picks is kudos to Atlanta for not having to give up a player. And for Chicago, like, I think for Chicago, it helps that they've like recouped some picks because for the last several months, and I would say in the last year or so, they have just been like, yep, we don't, yeah, take these picks. Like, like the picks are going with every, sort of deal. So it was good for them to kind of recoup some of those picks. I think all in all, like the trade itself was probably shocking for a number of reasons. So I'll go back and say in the fact that like, obviously last season did not end the way Chicago wanted to. They had a rocky into the season, up and down record. And then of course, Angel had made some public comments that didn't necessarily sit well with the team. And so I think for a lot of the questions were, okay, well, is Angel going to play in Chicago this coming season, right? And she said in December when she was at Team USA training camp, yeah, I'm under contract. I plan on playing there. And Chicago and their front office, Jeff Pagliocca, which is their GM, was like, hey, we've had conversations. We've addressed this. Like everybody's moved on. We're going to move forward essentially. Well, and then, free agency gets here and it's like, boom, first day of free agency, Angel's going to the Dream. And you're like, well, wait a minute, hold on. What's happening? Now, obviously there was always a possibility that Angel may not have finished the season right with Chicago. I always kept that in the back of my mind that like, hey, they could have essentially traded her if these issues that Angel highlighted were a lot deeper than maybe even, perhaps we knew. Maybe that it becomes a situation where Chicago says, hey, thanks so much. Like, hey, we're going to move on. We're going to move forward, which is what happened. It just happened sooner than like we initially thought. So I would say from the standpoint of having her join the Dream, from their standpoint, this is a phenomenal trade. It's an absolutely phenomenal trade because I would say like Angel, not only like her rebounding alone is what people are going to focus on, right? Like she's a generational rebounder and that's, we can't deny that. But what Angel does is so much more than rebounding. It is the playmaking ability. She's a top defender in this league, and I don't think we talk about that enough. She causes a lot of disruption. She's going to allow Atlanta to get out and transition a lot more, and I think that is what Atlanta was banking on, is that they would have someone who would not only be able to, clang and bang in the paint and get those shots, but also stretch the floor, right? And I think you're gonna see that Carl Smeska, which is their head coach, who's now in their second year, has done a really good job of developing players. He had Naz Hillman, who won 6th Player of the Year last year under him. Alicia Gray got her first All WNBA, last year under him. Bree Jones had a career year under Carl Smesko. So it tells you that like the possibilities of growth for Angel are really, really high with the Dream. And they believe, as they've said in their press conference, hey, we believe she's the piece that could help us get over that hump to get our first championship as a franchise. So I would say on that side, great trade for the Dream. For Chicago, I'm not really convinced as to where we're going with this because, like, and I wrote about this. So this is not. I'm not saying anything new. So I wrote about this when I graded the trade, but essentially, I'm not really quite convinced of where they're going. They say that they're in win now mode, right? But you have traded Angel Reese, you traded Ariel Atkins, you have essentially gotten players who you had previous experience with. So you went out and got Azzi Stevens from LA. She resigned there. You resigned Courtney Vandersloot. You go get Skylar Diggins. You go get Dejanay Carrington, which are all great pieces. I'm not. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that the foundation you had has kind of been ripped out. Like you've essentially like gone on and said, hey, I really like this house that I'm about to buy, but I'm gonna redo the entire thing. And I'm gonna redo the entire thing. I'm taking out, like, I'm essentially leveling the house and the ground that it was built on, right? So then you're like, well, what's happening here? So I think for Chicago, my question to them is, if you're still in win now mode, what's the window for when you want to win? Because the biggest things that teams that want to win, and you know this as well as on the NBA side, is continuity. Like, if you have a core that is there, maybe you swap out some bench pieces here or there, but you have to have continuity in your core. And Chicago does not have that. Like, they've had a different roster every year under their GM. And to me, I'm very confused as to when is the win now? When is that going to happen? Because the Aces, a core. New York Liberty, a core, right? All these teams that have won in the last several years, they have an established core, and maybe they've swapped out pieces on their bench, but they have something that works. They also have stability at the coaching position as well. And Chicago's had 2 different coaches in the last 3 years. So that is something that I'm just a little confused about where they're going. So I would like to see how this all pans out, not only with the Angel Reese trade, but with the other trades they made this season. So over and all, I think that this trade certainly will, like, time will tell, of course, whether it works out for both sides. But in my opinion, at face value, where I'm taking it right now, I give the Dream a ton of credit for pulling off this trade. It is a phenomenal trade in terms of what Angel can do on a basketball court and even off the court. The city will absolutely embrace her. They already did before she was ever an Atlanta Dream member. I can remember her, I say freshman year because I've been in college basketball for for weeks now. But her rookie season, I remember people lining up hours before the game even started in their LSU jerseys, in their Chicago Sky jerseys, wanting to see Angel play here in Atlanta. So I think that, the city will embrace her, and I think it'll be a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit on not just the rebounding on Angel to start, but that, like, what always stood out about her game is that two-way feel, like going back to LSU, that like just the overall understanding of the game that breaks down, and the feel being like the defensive instincts you highlighted, just being versatile, quick, active hands that can force turnovers and guard different positions down low, and then like have the grab and go handle to push the pace too, like have a little bit of like that downhill playmaking. And that's where, this could really be effective, is some of the, people covering the team highlighting her combination of rebounds and passing and handoff ability with these amazing shooters that Atlanta got to keep in the deal, and having a 30-14 record and adding that level of star talent that should complement them perfectly. It's like, it's not, Steph, Clay, and Draymond, but that's the idea here, is take threes and defend and hand off and run around. Like, another team that found a lot of success doing this is the Hornets, where they really, in the NBA side, the Charlotte Hornets doing it with defensive versatility, but just a rotating cast of guards and wings that can shoot and create off the ball, running around the offensive rebounds and keep kicking out for more threes. And it's going to win a lot of games. I think the question generally is half court creation come playoff time. But like, you have some talented talent there that can also create in the half court with Ryan Howard and Angel, of course. So, just an exciting mix of talent that should really, really like provide exciting basketball too. Like that's like, this style of play is very fun and it's effective. So, getting a team to focus on the offensive rebounds and the threes, and then forcing turnovers, that's gonna be a fun team. And on the Sky side, you hit on, a lot of the concerns. Like, some of the messaging is confusing. I think just from very afar, it feels like you mentioned, some of the way they were talked about, I guess, behind the scenes. Like once that like half was it like a half game suspension for
Yeah.
something Angel had
Half.
said? Like, well,
Yeah.
once that happened, like a very it felt like maybe you're not on my side the way I thought you were kind of vibe from afar. And it's like maybe that was the beginning of the end. I don't know, but that feels like a pretty big moment that they never really came back from. So it almost looks like the reporting says they went with options that Angel also wanted to do, so they wanted to do right by her. So that
Yeah.
might have kind of hurt the deal. Like this is clearly like a home run for Atlanta in a vacuum and in reality. Like there's no debating the deal, I don't think. But maybe it was just kind of the best they could kind of get given the scenario of like maybe she didn't want to be there and maybe they just had to move on and some that's kind of what it seemed like. But who
Well,
knows? I mean, she also, not that she didn't want to be in Chicago, but that maybe because she loves Chicago, which we're about to play the clip here of your question here to get to the press conference. We gotta see this welcome press conference in Atlanta, and notable how much, like you said, how excited Atlanta and the fans are and the media just to have a presence like her in sports in Atlanta. It's big time. So I'll play that in a second here. But before I do, I wanted to hear your thoughts on Rickea Jackson and how you think she kind of like changes the equation for this guy and all this. It feels like they just kind of pivoted to, okay, we have to move on from Angel. Let's get a pick or two, I guess, and let's, even though we say we're going to win now, we're going to kind of move our actual core back from Ariel Atkins to Rickea Jackson as our kind of star. And it seems like a lot of familiar faces from you mentioned it, like the championship run and just the Sky. I happened to see like all those Sky games the year they won it. So this was a fun team with, it's like they had chemistry like 4 years ago, but they haven't played together since then. So like, how does that translate combine? Like there's a little bit of something there. Vandersloot obviously spends her career, most of it there. She's one of the faces of the franchise. But like you said, it's all like former familiar nostalgic faces of the franchise, and let's just see what they can all do this year. Let's see if they still have, if any of that like turns into some quick chemistry. Like they had such a low win total last year. They seem excited about the total combination of moves, but every team talks them into an off season around this time of year. So you hit on some of it, but how do you think Rickea changes kind of the equation on this guy's kind of like long-term future, or even chances this year?
yeah, so I'll actually back up a little bit. So I would say that like it was reported that Angel didn't ask for this trade, so that's something to me that is notable. That says that Chicago
Okay.
chose to move on, right? So to
All
me,
right.
that says, okay, hey, we choose to move on, but also we're going to ask Angel where she wants to go. And I think it's notable that she said, hey, I want to go to
Mm.
Atlanta. She previously had some relationships with players like Alicia Gray, Ryan Howard, those sorts of things. Obviously, she had talked to some of those same players down in Unrivaled. A lot of those players that are Unrivaled, they get a chance to talk to each other in ways that they probably won't during a regular WNBA season. So we've seen that happen for the last couple of seasons. Players who like potentially either played with one another, on the same team down at Unrivaled, or either they were around one another down at Unrivaled, have now ended up on the same team. I'll give you an example of Satsu Sabali joining New York Liberty. She was down on Unrivaled with with Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. So, but to that point, the Angel trade is one thing. And it's Rickea Jackson is the proper
Oh,
pronunciation for her name.
Rickea. There we go.
You're all
That's on
good.
me.
You're all good.
That's something that I is a constant. We're learning basketball here. It's a constant
Yeah,
challenge. So Rickea,
Rickea. Yeah,
she's great. I love watching her play. She's a bucket.
you're all good. So I think so. The trade for Rickea is something that I think is very interesting. So and I say this for a number of reasons. So I'm just a basketball sicko, and sometimes I go back and look at things that I've said before, and I'm like, where have I seen? Because like this Rickea to Chicago situation did not necessarily surprise me in the fact of this was 3 years ago, 2 years ago now. So when we do mock drafts, we typically try to like mock players to places we think that they would fit. Oddly enough, in the final mock draft I did for the 2024 WNBA draft, Rickea Jackson was in Chicago and Angel Reese was in Atlanta. And and so like when I went and saw this mock draft the other day, I was like, what did I know? Like, what was I thinking? Where was
you knew the future
headed? Right? But honestly, I think it was for a number of reasons. At that point, this is back then, Kahleah Copper had just left the Sky, right? She had moved on to Phoenix Mercury, and I'm thinking, okay, you want a gritty two-way player who can come in, who can get you buckets, who can play defense, who can stretch the floor, who can do the mid-range. Like, that's Rickea Jackson. That's where my brain was going, and that's essentially where I think
that
Chicago's
makes a lot of sense, especially with that old roster, like where that fit is. That's the role she could fill, is that slasher.
Yes. So that's kind of where my brain was going for like Rickea. And now I think she'll fit that same sort of role in this new system in Chicago now. So I think the larger question I have is, how will it all work together for a sustained period of time? I think one of the bigger issues that you have when you bring in a bunch of different players is getting them to work together well right away, because this is kind of where the league is now. It's a what have you done for me lately league right away. And then can we do this for the sustained part of the season where we are automatically at least in the conversation for the playoffs? So that's where my brain goes is, and I think that Chicago could be a playoff team. Absolutely. You got Skylar Diggins on that team, who's still one of the best two-way guards in the league. You have Azzi Stevens, who had a phenomenal year last year with the Sparks, and also I think we'll take that and move it over to Chicago. She's familiar with Chicago. She was on that 2021 championship team. You went and drafted Gabriela Jaquez, who, in my opinion, is one of the steals of the draft. She is a gritty sort of glue player, two-way menace. And I think that she'll do well in Chicago. I'm curious to see how that works out. And then I think from there, like, you still have Camila Cardoso on your roster. So you've got some pieces there. I'm just curious about, like, what's the window for Chicago's success? How long will that take? So I think if you're looking at these couple of trades in unison, yeah, I think that Atlanta might have the upper hand in terms of, like, how quickly can Angel get acclimated into Atlanta's system? How well can they run off their feet? Because they've already had pieces that were there. They already had Jordan Cannon. They already had Naz Hillman. They already had Bree Jones. They already had, Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray. And now you're adding Angel into that fold, right? So I think at that point, you also have Tahina Paopao off the bench as well. So let me not get started. I could probably go through this entire Atlanta Dream roster because I know them very well. But to that point, there's continuity there. And there's a little continuity on the Chicago side, but there's also a lot of new faces. And so I think even with playing with each other, in other spaces and opportunities and having ties to one another, it's a little bit different when you get on that court and now your teammates on that same team. And so I think that for Chicago fans, I know y'all have been through a lot the last couple of seasons, so watching this team change. So I would say, yes, this is another season where you're going to have to probably give the team grace. And maybe Chicago surprises all of us and they come out and they're a top 5 team. I don't know that. But what I do know is that continuity matters. Having that core matters. And that's why you've seen so many successful teams, they go out and win championships. Now, I will also say this. You do have an exception to the rule. Like last year, Phoenix Mercury, they made it all the way to the WNBA finals with essentially a reworked core. Right now, they did have some pieces that were there, but essentially a reworked core and a reworked bench. And it worked. It worked by and large. And I think obviously that was a talent level. You have an Alyssa Thomas, Asatu Sabali, Kahleah Copper, some of those top, level players in the leagues. But that's not always the case. So I just caution people when you're looking at these teams, you're getting excited about the pieces that are there. And I'd say the same thing for Atlanta too. I always maintain level expectations because you could on paper, this looks phenomenal. And then you get and play in basketball and you're like, well, this did not go how I thought it was going to go. So, but yeah, I just think that these trades will probably come to prove pivotal, and we'll probably be talking about them again come midseason and probably come playoffs too.
Yeah. I mean, when you started going through the roster, the toughness definitely stood out. Like those are some tough players in Chicago, especially like the defense. You mentioned I believe that's I can't pronounce his name either, but Jaime Jaquez, Heat players. I believe that's his sister as well.
Yeah, Gabriela Jaquez. Yep.
Gabriela. So that's a fun brother sister combo there. But just the defense of everyone you mentioned, like Azura Stevens and Cardosa, and bringing in Rickea and Skylar as scorers too. I mean, there's some toughness that you would think should help them compete right away. But, there's a question mark for, like you said, throwing a lot of pieces together, and things look good on paper, and then you got to go out and see it. And yeah, I totally can see and with you that Angel should step right into this team. And, it looks like they lost Brittany Griner as well. So she should kind of fill some of that defensive anchor role and the rebounding, the tough screening. But like she just brings, like so much more rebounding and playmaking and just feel, I guess, with the ball in her hands, a little bit more like of a hub that it feels like they can kind of run in and out of, like Angel to shooters and back and forth through endless pick and roll relocation, drive and kick, or whatever it is, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be a fun, especially regular season team. That's gonna be a tough out, and then it'll be fun to see, what it looks like in the playoffs. Just that two-way, you need that defense and the half court creation too in the playoffs, but they have the talent there, so it'll be interesting to see for sure. The other headline, actually, before we go to that, let's play the clip here
Yeah.
of your question. I almost forgot. That was a close one. We got to play it, and just your reaction to this clip and just Atlanta as a whole, appreciating Angel coming to their city.
Hey, call again for this day. Angel, this question is for you. Obviously, a lot of change over the offseason and with free agency, that sort of thing. How do you stay grounded at these moments from coming to Chicago to Atlanta and those weird?
Yeah, obviously my two first experiences were in Chicago. One, I'm really grateful for the people, the environment that I was in, and I'm always going to be grateful for that because I did experience a lot of great things and enjoy being able to grow within my first 2 years. But I wanted more. I love to win. I love to compete, and I wanted to be surrounded by people that can make me better. And I'm not satisfied with what I am as a player, and I felt like being around these kinds of players would help me be better, and I can help them in different ways to help them win. And that's all I ever wanted. I don't care about anything else that comes with it. At the end of the day, I want to win, and being able to come to an organization that really cared about their players. I mean, I saw Renee at the games, and I didn't even know she was part of the ownership. And just being able to see like the GM, having a GM that really wanted me and knew what my talents are, being able to talk to players that like genuinely know what I am and who I am as a person, but also as a player is like a breath of fresh air. Like it low-key makes me emotional because I haven't had this, and I'm really grateful, and I'm really looking forward to the start.
Some of the videos that came out, including that one, was just the giant reaction that Atlanta had to just Angel Reese coming in and from afar. I mean, Angel is one of, the most marketable athletes in sports and culture right now, it seems like. I mean, she's popping up with a new marketing deal or new endorsement every other time I open, a social media account. She's everywhere. She's a face of the league. She moves the league. The noted ticket prices and the sales skyrocketed when she, the trade became official. Like, it's wild, all the stuff she has to kind of deal with when she's very obviously like one of the faces of the future of this league for a long time, and just, just everywhere. So what's it like to be able to cover her, and what was this video? What was your reaction to kind of this video and kind of the city of Atlanta, embracing her after this deal?
Yeah, so I think for me, this is really full circle for me. One of the first times I ever had the chance to speak with Angel was at her draft, and so I remember that version of Angel. I remember the version of her, of course, going through her couple of seasons in Chicago to, of course, her being here in Atlanta now. And I think for her, she's gone through quite a bit, right? She's gone through the ups and downs of being in the spotlight, the ups and downs of being a WNBA player and learning and finding where your groove is. And that can be really tough. I think a lot of people forget that she's 23 years old and she's dealt with quite a bit. And I think people forget that when they level these criticisms at these players. And I think that's one of the things that I try to reinforce in anyone I cover, not just Angel, is that these players are human. They're human beings. at the end of the day, right? And I think we should cover them as such and not just treat them as this is just an athlete or this is just a person who entertains or whatever you want to call it. But like these are human beings. And so I really try to bring that aspect to the way that I cover things. And so my question to Angel was more so about, yeah, she's been through a lot. Like, how in the world are you staying grounded when you're getting traded from Chicago where like, obviously, clearly, it probably didn't go the way that you thought it might have been, right? When you were drafted till now, and now you're in a new city. Now you're dealing with, those emotions of change and those sorts of things. So I just wanted to give her the chance to say that in her own words. And as we just saw, like earlier this week, she talked about not having a great relationship with the media because of the things that have been either said about her or either her words taken and not being represented truly. So I just wanted to give her the chance to say how she felt in her own words, and really shed light on that journey because I think it was important. I think it got lost in the hoopla of, oh my goodness, Angel's in Atlanta now, which is really, really cool. It's definitely an awesome trade, but I think we forgot that. So I wanted to give her the chance to talk about that. Although I did not think that she was going to cry. I did not think that it was going to become a viral moment. So I was honestly a little shocked by how, I was a little surprised by how vulnerable she was in that moment to say, this is what I've been through. And also, like, I wanted more for myself. I still want to win. I still want to be coached hard. I want to be around people that are going to support me, right? Like that, to me, that was the crux of the answer. And so I'm so happy I asked it. And I'm happy that she doesn't know me, right? She doesn't know me at all, but I'm happy that she at least felt comfortable enough with the Atlanta media and in this space to be vulnerable for that moment. And so I think ultimately that's what I hope to continue to do, covering her for however long she's in Atlanta. If she retires here in Atlanta, no one knows what the future holds, but I hope that like we cover her in such a way that that I do with all the players that I cover, which is we treat them as human beings. We treat them with respect. We say the hard things when we need to say them, but we also say the soft things when we need to say them as well. And I think that's important that we forget a lot about the emotions that go into these players. The storytelling gets lost. It's just a lot of times it's all about the headlines and the clicks and those sorts of things. And yes, Angel's a name that brings those. And I don't think she's ever denied that like, hey, everyone's going to be wondering what I think or how I move or those sorts of things. But I think we lose that element. And so I think that moment, and I hope that moment just reminded everyone to take a moment to pause, to like actually inquire about the person on a level that's not intrusive to them or that's not offending to them, but just trying to get to the heart of who they are, what they're going through. And I honestly think that we'll probably still continue to have that story here in Atlanta during her first season. A lot of people are going to be wondering, like, what does this all look like? And I'm hoping that she enjoys it. I'll say this for the one season that we had Brittany Griner, and even I'll go back season before that you had Tina Charles. Both of those players are legends in the game. And they absolutely had a great time in Atlanta because of the way the media operates, because of the way the fans operate, because of the way the city embraced them. So anytime that there is, someone who is coming in new, I hope that they get the same treatment. They get the same sort of experience of like Atlanta's really good in supporting these players in their journeys and then welcoming them with open arms. I think Angel will have no problem with that, as evidenced by a sold out jersey and crazy ticket prices and so much excitement from the team and the franchise itself. Everyone from the staff all the way up to ownership is super, super excited to have her here.
Yeah, I'm super glad you highlighted just the humanizing, the importance of humanizing in kind of this line of work, humanizing the athletes and just reminding fans and everyone that, these are people first. And to your point, that's what hit me when you said that, like how young she is now and how young she must have been going through the original hype of the Caitlin Clark matchup in college. That like a lot of this started off by upsetting Caitlin Clark and winning a national championship and being tough and being known for that. And then it just took a life of its own, and that's where her name gets dragged into things that have nothing to do with her. And understandable that you immediately realize, oh, that this media machine will just talk about me however they like. So her now fully controlling her own lane and doing interviews that she wants to do, like a casual Michelle Obama interview the other day, just in the middle of her press tour of, all these different marketing deals. Like she's really I think found the perfect way to kind of capitalize on all of that hype and really, do what she needs to do to be an icon for women and sports. on and off the court. She's crushing it. So Atlanta got to start, no doubt. And I know we're running up against the clock here, so I thought we'd round out the pod with a few speed round questions to kind of hit through the offseason on a few thoughts. The number one pick, forgive me if I'm trying with the names, but Azzi Fudd
Azzi.
crushed it.
Yeah.
Azzi.
Yeah.
Well,
Azzi
Arike Ogunbowale and Paige
Arike.
Beckers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're a fun core. How do you think, forgive me, Azzi fits in with the number one pick here? Was that, much of a surprise? Like she was such a dominant college player. Like there was a little bit of a surprise there, but instant reaction to, that fit, just an exciting young trio to kind of build around in Dallas, on top of Cooper Flagg being in there on the NBA side and maybe another young pick.
Yeah. I think for the wings, like Azzi was always the clear pick. I think maybe us in the media, I always try to leave the door open because I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. In terms of like, I don't ever like to just assume, like there's some picks like the Caitlin Clark and Paige Beckers, like number one picks for the last 2 years. You kind of knew that's where it was happening. But there was a little bit of like, is it not? But now looking back and obviously talking more and more with the wings and seeing their response, yeah, Azzi was always the pick. And so I think it makes sense for them. They needed someone who could move off ball. They needed someone who could add, shooting and scoring and help open up the floor for them. So I think it makes sense from that way. I think the biggest thing, is how is this, this guard trio going to work now in Dallas? But I think ultimately, I think they'll be fine. Obviously, Azzi and Paige have played together. Paige also has that history with Rickea of having a year underneath her belt. And I think that the other thing is they also brought in more veteran guards too. So you have Alicia Clark, who's also in the fold now. And I think that you'll see that will help. That will matter. When it comes to Azzi's transition and how she climbs into that fold. So I'm not necessarily worried about Dallas at all. I think that they'll still be a competitive team. And I'm very, very curious. Obviously I think Azzi's probably Rookie of the Year favorite. I don't think that's a shock by any means or anything else like that. But my question is, will she have any competition for Rookie of the Year? That is kind of, that's kind of where I always land. And I ask the same questions, same year for Caitlin and Paige. And will there be any competition? Will we see that kind of like wrestling back and forth, or will she like very clearly separate herself and it'll be Azzi and everybody else?
Right. Well, that'll be interesting to see. I mean, Lauren Betts is an exciting rookie out of UCLA. It was crazy. They had to have set a record, UCLA, for the number of picks from one team for like not just women's basketball. That was like any sport I've ever seen. It was just like they were just name calling the whole UCLA roster like it's the 70s dominant UCLA team that never lost a game for 5 years. It's like, we'll just draft everyone off this team. It's like, what was going on in that team? But Betts is really, really tough. So that she came to mind here. And I think Olivia Miles was maybe the other name in the mix for that top pick. Okay. So, maybe she'll be in there. Speed round. Next question. What's the biggest storyline or two from the W offseason? You mentioned we missed if we blink, we missed it. What's the storyline that the fans just missed?
That's hard to say because I feel like the CBA dominated the offseason. Like we have this brand new CBA that we needed to get over the finish line, and that kind of dominated it. I think the thing that kind of went under the radar, because we kind of, I won't say forgot about it, but it's definitely underneath the radar, was the relationship between Kathy Engelbert and the players. So obviously right before we got into the thick of these CBA negotiations, I would say the later half of the CBA negotiations, there was some contention there between Kathy Engelbert and the players. You have Nafisa Collier calling out Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA leadership openly, publicly. It was like a scathing sort of like, hey, I don't think you're great at your job. That sort of situation, right? So I think that is something that we need to continue to monitor. Obviously, I think things have probably gotten better considering they were just in rooms with Kathy Engelbert and having to hammer out the CBA negotiations, those sorts of things. But I think that's something that we want to monitor. I even asked Kathy Engelbert about that at the WNBA draft. How did she feel like, her relationship had progressed? And, she said she had gotten it better, or it had gotten better. And there were things that she learned that the players wanted, they needed. And, they can take that and move forward. But that's something still I think, should keep your eye on. The other thing to think about is how will the new expansion teams, the Portland Fire and Toronto Tempo, up the ante and surpass what the Golden State Valkyries did in their first season. So you set a record for the number of wins that an expansion team has. You go to the playoffs. Like, that's a lot of pressure for other expansion teams to live up to. So that's something I think that probably not as many people are thinking about. But I think as this league continues to grow, we got to start asking, okay, well, how quickly is the assimilation, to getting into being a contender? And I think the Valkyries very firmly entered themselves into the chat of like, yeah, we're new here, but like we came to compete. So I really, really think that we should keep an eye on the Fire and the Tempo and see what they come to do in their first years as well.
Yeah, going to be very interesting with some expansion teams. They made some noise trading Flau'jae like that in the middle of the draft.
Flau'jae.
Thank you, because we're glad you're here to help me get through these names.
I'm a big believer of pronouncing names correctly, and for people to actually like tell me how to pronounce their names and do it. People deserve to have their names pronounced correctly. So
you're absolutely right. I'm just
never mind helping.
You're so hopefully I get there. Flau'jae. She has a song with Lil Wayne. I love the song. Like she crushes it as a rapper on and off the court. So I'm excited to see what she does as a rookie as well. Last question for you here, if you have time. Who's the real contenders 2026? Which teams? How many are there, do you think, and who has a real chance to win?
Yeah, that's so it's a tough question, but it's a good one. So obviously the Aces, I think immediately, like, yeah, any team with A'ja Wilson on it, I'm taking 10 times out of 10 over anyone. So Aces automatically to run it back. New York Liberty, they have their core back, they're healthy. They added Satu Sabali, but Nyjah Laney Hamilton, who was a glue player for them, is also back. So definitely Liberty. I think after that, you got to say the Atlanta Dream. Their entire core is back. Plus, they added Angel Reese. Plus, they added some really nice pieces on the bench. They just drafted Medina Oka in the first round, and I think that they'll also contend. Beyond that, I think you got to say Indiana Fever. Any team with Caitlin Clark on it, yes, absolutely, you are in the contending conversation. It's not even a question about it. Also, any team with Aaliyah Boston on it, I'm taking it, and Kelsey Mitchell too. They have their trio. I'm curious to see what they do. And then after that, I'd probably say rounding out the top 5 is probably the Sparks. The Sparks are a team who went out and got Nneka Ogwumike. She came back home essentially after being in Seattle for 2 seasons. You go get Ariel Atkins in the Rickea Jackson trade. And then you re-signed Erica Hamby. Cameron Brink is still there. You've got some pieces on your bench as well. I think that they're a team who also we need to keep our eyes on. And beyond that, maybe somebody surprises us. I don't know. There's always one team a year that like nobody has on their radar, or like, hey, it's someone that we just, again, they just worked. So we'll see. But those are probably my top 5.
I like it. The Sparks really do have a ton of talent. Seeing a lot of, turnover, like you mentioned as well. But yeah, I mean, you got Chelsea Gray, A'ja Wilson on a team. I'm gonna say you got a pretty good chance come playoff time. They've been pretty dominant. They're way too much fun to watch. I can't wait to see how this season turns out. Was there any storylines, any players, any movements that we skipped over here that you want to highlight, or any work you got coming up that you want to give a shout out before we sign off here?
I think the only other storyline is that this is the 30th season of the WNBA. So, and for anyone who's not watching and you're listening, I actually have on a WNBA 30 shirt today, which oddly enough was unintentional. I put it on today and I was like, I think I'm going to wear this. Yeah, I think I'm going to wear this shirt today. And oddly enough, today it's April 24th and it is the 30th anniversary of the league being in existence. So I think that is something that you will see throughout the entire season, is that celebration of 30 years. I also have some content. I don't want to spoil it because it's actually really good. We have some content coming your way of like just celebrating that. And so I think that, you pay attention to the things we got coming out. But all in all, I think this season I would love to continue to see just an appreciation for the league and where it's going. These women are talented. These players are phenomenal. And I think that more and more, I want to see more people come to learn about the W. And that's something that has been a passion of mine, is like, hey, if you want to come and you want to watch the W, those sorts of things, I think it's important. Also, this is just any sport. And I say this to anyone, but like, if you're going to watch a sport, you're going to be involved, those sorts of things. It's always great to learn, whether that is, hey, I learned that this player likes this, or I learned that this team does that, or they have a history of that. Whatever the learning is, learning in any capacity, I think is always great. And the more that you learn, the more that you'll like. I think, in my opinion, the more that you'll stick around for the big moments. And I think there definitely will be some this season. And who knows? Maybe there'll be more history. Last year we just watched the Aces win another title after being under 500 in August. I still cannot believe that I just watched that run, which is absolutely insane. We watched A'ja Wilson win a 4th MVP. We watched her win a Finals MVP. We watched that absolutely insane, cold, ridiculous shot in Game 3 that will live on for the rest of sports history. And I was actually in the building for that, so I still cannot believe.
Oh,
yeah, I was at the WNBA Finals.
No big deal.
Just casual flex. But no, honestly, like, I was honored to be in the building for that, and that's the type of history that I hope that we continue to make for this league.
That's the awesome part about sports. You never know when the all-time moments are going to come. For the Magic, it was a Monday night against the Portland Trailblazers. They had a Desmond Bain fadeaway game winner, and it changed their season. And it's just a random Monday night. But that's what makes sports awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time today, Meghan. So, always cool just learning about basketball. And like you said, to round out your point, just if you haven't tried the W yet for whatever reason, like, you turn on a game and you realize the skill is off the charts and right up there with the guys when it comes to the handles and the shot making, and just these insane, like, there's a lot more similarities than you realize when you're coming in cold and you just shrug it off. Like, you just got to give it a try to realize what you're missing. I mean, if you're a Hawks fan watching CJ McCollum pull up for game-winning mini pull-ups the other night, or just to take out the Knicks left and right, you're going to enjoy the handles and the pull-up shooting of, Chelsea Gray or whoever it may be on the girls' side. So, always, you just got to tune in and enjoy. So thanks so much for taking the time today, and, all your work covering the Dream, the WNBA, and highlighting these players' development stories and their basketball journeys, I think is what's always cool. So thanks for taking the time today, Meghan. Always fun talking hoops.
Thanks. I appreciate you.